At First Partners Bank, our passion is for helping your business thrive. As our customers go about the business of building their successes, we're working right alongside them because when they dream, we dream. Just like a modern-day fountain of youth, the team at La Vie MD provides their clients with a customized experience that leaves them feeling refreshed and years younger. However, like with most businesses, taking a daily trip to the bank was both time-consuming and distracting. That's why Roy Savoy, the owner of La Vie MD, has partnered with First Partners Bank. After reviewing his needs, First Partners Bank developed a business banking plan that included courier service. Now, with their bank deposits scheduled for pickup on a daily basis, La Vie MD can concentrate on what's really important, their clients. As a customer of First Partners Bank, you enjoy the privileges of our partnership banking philosophy. What's more, First Partners Bank has the business banking solutions specifically designed to save your business time and money. Discover what it means to have a banking partner, because when you succeed, we succeed. Call us today at 205-822-5500 or visit our website at firstpartnersbank.com. First Partners Bank, member FDIC.
Time to do this thing again. We're going to switch gears just a little bit. Talk a little business tonight. We try to bring you experts on this Thursday night segment from different facets of business, whether it be marketing or dealing with employees or anything. That a lot of folks out there that you're in a small business or you're thinking about doing it one day and you just don't know this stuff. And our good friends at First Partners Bank are the ones that are so good to do business education in our community. Bethany, always for the vertical solutions, always bringing us good guests on. Bethany, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing well. We'll talk to her again in just a little bit as we talk about a business seminar coming up after the first of the year. That if you're in a small business or need a little more education, want to network, you'll enjoy knowing about this, and it's absolutely free. All the things that First Partners does for our community are free. And tonight, I'm really excited about Tony Willoughby being with us, even though he's an attorney. How many attorney jokes have you heard in your life, Tony?
Oh, a few, and I enjoy every one of them.
You do the what I call there are white hats and black hats in that profession, and you're one of the white hats. You really help people get themselves together when they're starting out and trying to decide what kind of entity they want to have. Because if you're going to have a business, you got to make a little entity there to be able to do tax and your paperwork and everything.
That's right. We always recommend that anybody that wants to start a business in Alabama or any other state for that matter, you have to jump through a few hoops to protect yourself and to protect your family, and make sure that you've done everything you need to do to get the business organized properly.
Yeah.
Protect yourself from adverse tax consequences, adverse liability. So there's lots of things you need to think about when you start a business to make sure you start off on the right foot.
And some folks think you can just go and get one of these canned little packages and fill out a couple of forms and do it right. But you really need to be strategic, in my estimation, having run a small business, in how you incorporate or do an LLC, or which one you pick.
You do. There are several types of entities out there. There's obviously sole proprietorships, which means you don't have an entity.
It's just you, one person.
Just you, one person, and you go do what you do. You sell something. You provide a service. You can also have a partner, and that if you have anybody that joins you in this venture of for making money, that's called a partnership. And then you have other types called C corporations, S corporations, LLCs, limited liability companies, things like that. So it really is more complicated than going online and filling out a form. It's not something that you can just take for granted anymore. You can get forms online, fill them out, and file them at the Secretary of State's office or the probate court's office, who will file them with the Secretary of State. But the other forms and issues that you need to address will not be covered by those online forms.
So I'm going to ask you some basic questions that I had myself when getting started out years ago. Well, where do you go to get a tax ID number? How do you know which way to incorporate?
Well, the starting point would be start with yourself. Start with a good business plan. And if you don't know how to do a business plan, find somebody that can help you with a business plan. Once you've determined that your plan will work for you, then I would suggest you find good advisors, a good attorney and a good CPA. And those two individuals will help you prepare the right documents for the type of entity that you need to be forming. Most people in Alabama, starting out, will need something in the line of a LLC, a limited liability company. It's a simple organization that allows you to take advantage of the tax system, allows you to pay only one level of tax on the earnings for your occupation, and it also protects you from liability personally, so your personal assets are not at risk.
Because this entity, this LLC, is what does the function of billing and
That's
invoicing
correct.
and communicating with clients. So there's sort of creates a wall between you and it.
That's correct. It allows you to separate your business life from your personal life.
But sometimes that gets intertwined because a lot of people
It
work out
does.
of their homes, and some of their expenses for themselves. And we're not here to do tax law, but some of the stuff you can write off. Sometimes you can't. How do you know where that is?
Well, that's some of those laws can get very complicated, like the home office deduction, expense deductions are very complex. And you have to be very careful how you do those things. So I would highly recommend at that point in time when you're having substantial expenses, you're wanting to write things off, you need to check with your CPA or your tax advisor to make sure that you're taking the right stance on that activity.
Is it expensive to get a lawyer involved in it? I mean, I'm not asking you to give me quotes, but sometimes lawyers do this as a package, or do you do it as a retainer, or how does that work?
Typically, it's not that expensive. A lot of lawyers will do it on a flat fee for filing LLCs or preparing the LLC documents. It's not necessarily the documents themselves that make the difference. It's the advice you get when you're preparing the documents, knowing which documents to prepare for the client's situation. So, no, it's not expensive to incorporate or to form an LLC. The filing fees at the Secretary of State's office and the probate court run from $150 to about $200. And that's the state filing fees. You have a business privilege tax that you must file when you start within 45 days. And if you don't do it within 45 days, you'll just pay $50 more.
Yeah.
It's about $100. And then you have business licenses you must get wherever you're doing business in a municipality. They'll require you to file that business license, and I highly recommend that you do that, because if you don't, they like to come knock on doors and make sure you're doing it. So.
Yeah.
You know, there's some startup expenses that will be there. So it's not that expensive to do it, but the rewards for doing it right will save you lots of money down the road.
It's worth the investment.
Absolutely.
I was sitting around a table one time. It was a real estate deal we were working on, and I mean, there were literally millions of dollars on the table. This is where I learned about the importance of doing it right. And I'll never forget this. I mean, this deal was getting hung up over literally one sentence in a contract. Everybody in the room was about to get up and walk out. Everybody was frustrated. One of the players in the whole thing, who wasn't the lawyer in the room, got up and he said, "Does this really matter? Does this sentence really matter?" And one of the lawyers just kind of looked over his glasses. He says, "No, it doesn't matter until it matters."
Until it matters.
And I'm sure that's something y'all learn in law school. But he made the point that you got to get this right now, because you never know what happens on the back end of a business
exactly
venture
right.
or anything.
Well, even with family ventures, it's the same thing. We all think we get along, and we do get along for the most part, but things occur during the business cycle or during the business life that puts pressure on the shareholders or the members, and those pressures can make decisions more difficult. So what we want to do when we start out is, if you know you're going to have a partner or a co-shareholder or a member in an LLC, you want to make sure you set forth the guidelines in that document that control those decisions, tell you how to make them under those circumstances. And that takes a lot of the pressure off. Because you've established the guidelines on how you're going to operate your company up front. And then if you need to change those guidelines, everybody can agree at some point in time to change them. So it's not inflexible. It's just when things don't go the right way, you have a guideline to make sure that you resolve those situations fairly, equitably, and the way you agreed from the outset.
Because not only, in my estimation, would that potentially save you on the financial side, but it could save some relationships in your life.
Absolutely.
If you're doing business with friends or family, because you just refer back to the document, because it says what it says. It's not your opinion versus mine and all that.
That's exactly right, and that's what your advisors are for, is to help you with those terms. They can, advisors, good lawyers, good CPAs can advise you on what terms need to be in that document to prevent those things from occurring down the road. The catastrophic events that happen to particularly family businesses typically happen when you don't have a document setting forth those guidelines.
Right.
When you kind of fly by the seat of your pants, and a lot of people are successful doing that. A lot of times they get in trouble down the road when family members or partners disagree. And the disagreements are what we try to prevent through the documentation. And that's all done through operating agreements, bylaws, buy-sell agreements, directing you, if you want it out of the business at a certain time, how do you get out? Well, it's a lot easier to say, I'm just going to get out. But when you get down to wanting to actually get out, how do you do it?
How do you unwind it and
Exactly.
separate?
And what's it worth? How much is this portion of the company worth? Well, that's all set forth in those documents, and that's the value of good advisors.
That was another thing on the list here to ask you about, to talk about, is a succession plan for if there's trouble or somebody dies or you both decide to dissolve it. If you've done it right on the front end, that will be a lot easier on the other end.
Absolutely. When you start a company with more than one member or more than one owner, you always have to anticipate the dissolution of the company, the winding up.
You don't want to be negative, though, because you're all heady and you got a dream and you got money, but you never want to think about it, but it pays to do that.
It pays to do that, and what it also helps you do, it helps you focus your attention on how to run your business to make the most money, to make it profitable, to accomplish the goal. And if you have a good fallback position for when bad things happen or when situations occur where you need to unwind, it's in place. You don't have to worry about that during the operation of your company. So you keep it, again, you keep it positive during the operation of the company, but we always have to protect for the negative events that might happen, a death or a disability or just a falling out. And those terms are you put those terms in the operating agreement and the buy-sell agreements on the front side. And what that does is helps you focus on the terms of the deal up front. So you don't have to create the deal down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always advisable.
Probably have a hard time getting clients to think about that when they're in your office getting started.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
But lawyers have a way of twisting your arm on certain situations.
Don't you? Y'all do that look over the glasses thing and educate us a little bit?
You have to.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, we're not doing our job. And
Absolutely.
that's the way we do our job, is to make sure you focus on the items that, that not only the good items, but the ones that will come back and bite you if you don't focus on them.
Let's talk about the sort of, a positive way when a business can be transitioned, and that would be, I guess, inheritance, or you're going to pass I've got people in my family that work hard. You work your life into something. You don't just see it die, and you want to hand it to maybe your kids and let one of them run it or not. I guess there are ways to transition out of a business before you retire, before you pass on.
Absolutely. And you do that by, one, establishing a good business plan, making sure you have good succession planning, not only from a family standpoint, but from a key employee standpoint. Your family members, your children that may want to inherit this business and start running this business may not be suited for the positions that are important to the company. For example, salesmen. The sales staff of a successful sales company, you have to ensure that those positions are filled after you're gone, or continue to be filled after you're gone. And it may not be with family members. So good succession planning from a key employee standpoint and a business ownership standpoint is important. And you do that from the start, and you start planning it from day one. The best way to transition a business is to plan 5 years before the transition. If you start planning 5 years before you want to transition out of your business, your plan will be in place now, and you can work toward that goal. And a lot of times what we do is we'll advise clients, especially in larger family businesses, to solicit the help of investment bankers to help them position their assets in the business and their personnel in the business to make it attractive for a buyout or a succession plan. So they maximize the value of their company during their lifetimes without someone coming in, a possible purchaser coming in and getting a cheap deal. are getting a bargain price. You don't want to sell your company for a bargain price. You don't want to transition out at a bargain. You want to transition your company at the highest price you can get.
And if you're key and sole in the if your image, I don't know, I'm thinking huge like Steve Jobs, his image with Apple. Every now and then you've got a CEO of even a smaller company where it's so associated. This is his company. Without that kind of transition in the minds of an investor, the company may not be as worth as much if you're not there. You're not leaving your family a whole lot if you're not there.
You hit the nail on the head. When you have a key employee, the owner of a company, small or large, if the value of that company rests with that owner, and that owner or that key employee has not done anything to replace himself or herself, then the value of that company to an investor's eyes is going to go down, because they're going to be buying a company without the engine. So we want to replace that engine, or at least have someone in line to come in to replace that.
And some people, I guess, without the plan, and this kind of gets over to insurance, but in their planning, they'll do key man policies or key man arrangements so that if there were to be something sudden, there's a executable plan to keep the company going.
That's right, and a lot of time, quite often we'll have insurance planning as part of a succession plan, especially in the family scenarios where there's no opportunity to replace that key employee. The father, for example, has built the business and name and reputation, and the reputation rests on the father. Well, if something catastrophic happened to the father, there's no way to replace that. And insurance is a mechanism that can be used to replace that value. And you can use the insurance to either transition the business to other people or to replace that key employee within the company. So it's works two ways.
And I suppose, okay, so you've got maybe family members that are to inherit, but like you said, they're not good managers, or maybe they're not schooled in the business and hadn't worked there and all that stuff. I guess you can set them up as an attorney. You can set them up in a way where they'll get an equity position but don't have any control.
We do that in situations where family members are not either interested in the business, or they're not capable of managing or handling the business. And we have, for example, the LLC model, the limited liability company model, allows us to put family members in non-voting positions or non-managerial positions, but still receive the equity portion or the growth position in the company, so that they don't lose the value, their inherited value in the company. They just don't have the management decisions to make, and it quite often that will preserve the value of the company, because unfortunately, family businesses are very difficult to pass down without proper planning. With proper planning, it works fine. But without proper planning, a vast majority of the family businesses do not survive.
Wow. And I guess that would be legally, financially, or even emotionally for the family to have to deal with all that. That's
exactly right. And that's where good advice from estate planners and corporate planners come into play, because the best case scenario for estate planning and succession planning is to involve the family. They understand what you're trying to accomplish, and you tell them what you're trying to accomplish, and you, lack of a better word, you get their buy-in. Once the family or the other partners buy in to your plan, then it becomes a group effort to make it succeed, and it works much better.
I guess by extension, that would be for employees to some extent, also for them to have confidence that, hey man, if the old man's out, I'm okay, this company will still be okay, and Junior's not going to come in here and wreck it. We see scenarios like that.
That's exactly what we do, and that's an important point. When you do not have good succession planning, key man planning, and don't bring the team, your employees, into the fold. Now, certain things you don't let it's not customary to bring your employees into all the decision-making process, but you want them to have enough information to know that something happens to Dad, we're not going to be on the street, and Son's not going to come in and run this in the ground. So you get the buy-in from the employees and the family members at the same time, and that's part of the planning.
We've had major, and I don't want to call any names, we've had major businesses in this town, in this market, over the years that I've watched just as a reporter, where the family came apart, the business came apart, things got sold, the brand went away, and it appears to me that they didn't properly plan.
That's the case most of the time, but in certain circumstances, there's very little you can do to prevent that. What we have to do is give the business every opportunity to succeed by putting together the proper plan, the right business entity, the right buy-sell agreements, the right estate planning documents, so that the company has the best chance for surviving the next generation or the future generations. There are also some very well-known family businesses in this town that have succeeded for multiple generations.
Sure, yeah.
And primarily because the family wanted them to succeed, but also because they had good planning. And it's not something that just happens. It takes time and it takes effort, and you have to devote the right amount of time and capital to put the right plan together so that the company can succeed.
Okay, so that's the end. That's the wind down of a business. Let's go. Let me take you all the way back to the beginning, ask you a very basic question, make sure we cover the blocking and tackling. Got a lot of folks out there in traffic tonight. They've got this dream in their head. They don't even know where to start. They've got a product. They've got a service. They want to do it. They might be able to find the money. Give me a few first steps, first few things you ought to do if you're ready to step out there.
The first step is I would highly recommend an entity, just from a liability standpoint, if nothing else. But determine if you want partners. If you're going to have partners, you must have an entity, an LLC or a S corporation or a C corporation. Typically, we'll see an LLC because it's one tax. There's no double tax, where you do have a double taxation issue when you have a C corporation. So from our standpoint, we like to see LLCs used from the very outset. You get a name reservation at the Secretary of State's office. It's a simple process. That preserves your name that you've got. Name means brand identity, and Bethany can help us with that.
Yes.
She'll tell us how brand identity is a big deal when you're promoting a business.
Even if it's not the actual trade name, you need a business entity name filed with the state.
That's correct. You can do business as anything you want,
Sure.
but we need a business name filed at the state.
Okay.
If we want to protect that business name, we want to use the trade name that we're going to use. That will at least put everyone on notice in the state and other states that this name is being used.
Do you have to research to make sure that name hasn't been used?
You do. The Secretary of State has a good website, and you go online and research that, and it will tell you if that name is being used, and it typically will not give you the exact same name, but you can use names very similar to other names, and there's two-edged sword. You don't want to get confused with a competitor.
Right.
So you want to pick a good name. Then what you would do after that point is you would file articles of organization or certificates of organization, whether it's an LLC or a corporation, and then that document is drafted by an attorney generally, and we hope, and you would schedule that meeting with the attorney to draft that document, draft the operating agreement, which sets forth the guidelines for operating your business, from the management of the organization all the way through the liquidation or winding up, the sale, the buy-sell agreements, and that sort of thing. Once you do that, you file that at the probate court's office, and they would send it to the Secretary of State's office and file it at the Secretary of State's office, and you would be an entity.
And then you go file with the IRS to get a tax ID number?
Then you go online with the IRS. You get a tax ID number from the Internal Revenue Service. You would file your business privilege tax return. You would file your business licenses with the municipalities where you're going to be doing business, and then you would be in business. Now,
I would jump in here and say, too, that it's before you go through all this paperwork and establishing structure, that it's important that you are sure that your idea is a viable one. So, in terms of looking at how many players are in the marketplace, where you're going to get your product from, are you a service-based? I mean, really
That'd be
thinking
your whole
it
business
through.
plan process.
Well, and you don't need an entire business plan, but you do need to understand what your viability is as a
Sure.
company, because you could go through this whole process and then find out something like there's really no more room in the marketplace for that particular type of product or service, and you've already gone way down that road. So it's good to understand.
Sure.
That's correct, and that's another thing that attorneys, we don't typically do for clients, is develop their business plans. We can assist them in that, but generally you can do the business plans on your own or have other advisors develop those for you. But we usually get involved after the business plan.
Well, and that's where your advice was sound. If you get to that point, like Bethany said, you think you got something, you're going to go with it. That's legally how you start.
That's correct.
And I think that's been helpful for some folks that wouldn't even know how to get on first base with that. So I appreciate you coming in tonight, Tony.
Absolutely.
Tony Willoughby, if folks want to contact you directly, how do they get you?
Well, they can call me. I'm an attorney at Dominick Feld Hyde here in Birmingham, and my number is 271-9669. And you can go online at dfhlaw.com. Our website is available there. We've got
stuff.
Good lawyers that can help you in most business applications.
And Bethany, I'm going to run through the details when we come back of the event that's coming up. But First Partners Bank, I appreciate them and appreciate you bringing them to us and help educate some folks.
Okay, thanks, Leland.
Out of time. Here's the bottom of the hour. I'll give you all the details of the event coming up, the workshop in January. When we come back, stay tuned. Superstation 101.
My name is Elam Holly, and I am the CEO of First Partners Bank, member FDIC. While some might think it's unusual for a bank to step outside the box and provide resources for business owners, we believe that being a great bank is just the beginning. We want to be your banking partner in life and in business, for now and the journey ahead, because your story is our story. Our success is tied to yours. We call it partnership banking, and it's the core of our mission. In fact, at First Partners Bank, we have developed an entire program of resources designed to help small business owners grow and succeed. They include the Tools for Success blog, the Small Business Workshop series, Tools for Success magazine, and of course, the Tools for Success radio program. Each of our Tools for Success initiatives are free and available to every business owner in the community, whether or not they're a customer of First Partners Bank. We've even set up a special website just for Tools for Success at yousucceed-wesucceed.com, where you can learn more about all the resources available for business owners. While you're there, you can subscribe to the blog, check the schedule for our next workshop learning event, browse through the virtual copy of the latest issue of the magazine, or listen to a podcast of the radio program. We are bankers, but first and foremost, we are partners. Partners with our customers, partners with our community. Our philosophy, our mission, our purpose is simple. When you succeed, we succeed. Call us today at 205-822-5500 and let us show you what partnership banking is all about.